No person in my life have I ever met that knows more about quarterbacks than Jordan Palmer, founder of QB Summit. He has worked with all of them, the Burrows, the Mahomes, the Josh Allens. He was the first person to tip me off on Josh Allen. We were talking about Darnold, and he said, keep your eye on this Josh Allen kid before anybody else did. And I got so many questions to ask you. I'm going to ask you about the rookie NFL quarterbacks. I'm going to ask you about Riley Leonard, who nobody's paying attention to, and Jalen Milroe, who I think is better than people think. But I want to start with this. You are, right now, I think you're an active quarterback consultant with Darnold.
Yeah.
So Sam calls you regularly. What unlocked, we know Kevin O'Connell's a good coach, but what unlocked the star power, the juice? What was unlocked? Because you always talk about that on this show.
Yeah.
We got to unlock something. What was it with Sam?
Well, his talent hasn't changed, right? He hasn't grown 2 inches since the draft. He hasn't gotten way faster. All these players' careers should evolve. Their throwing mechanics should evolve. Their understanding of defenses. So there's been an evolution over the last 6 years. The other thing is I don't think he'd ever really been through a ton of adversity, in high school and college, right? Kind of was a meteoric deal here at
Hero
SC.
ball, and he was winning them.
And then just getting drugged through the mud for multiple years, getting traded away for nothing, I think hardened him. And yes, the Kevin O'Connell, the pieces in the huddle, we don't need to spend time talking about how good the Minnesota Vikings roster and front office and coaching staff is, because that's all everybody's talking about. The biggest thing for him that I've seen is that in all of those years of kind of getting punched in the gut, the media and teams and traded and all that, I just never saw him cut a corner. I've never had this guy show up 15 minutes late, have to bail early. I've just never seen it. And the way that I work with him and Joe Burrow as well is it really is an annual relationship where, yes, the offseason we try and find, similar to what Tom Brady used to talk about, try and find one or two things, right? Because when you get to the level where you're playing where Sam is right now and Joe is right now, there's still an offseason coming up. They're still going to try and get better. And so what we do is in the offseason, we build the programming and look at what has been working and what can you build on. And then in season, every single week, we're reviewing things. And there's 3 categories. 1, what are you doing great that you need to continue to do great? Let's highlight it. What do you need to work on, which means you used to do it better than you did, and it's taken a step back for whatever reason. And then the third one is something to think about. Maybe something showed up in somebody else's game. Sam's attention and focus on those things, regardless of how bad it was going and right now how well it is going, the fact that his approach hasn't changed, I think is really actually like a superpower. Your willingness to buy in, find individual things to get better at is the superpower. And there's a perfect example. So bye week, it was week 6, I think, this year for them. He comes out here and we spend a day together. And at that point this season, at that point in the season, I think it was 24.8% of his misses, not necessarily incompletions, just a little off, was out breaking routes to the right. Identify a mechanical issue, not drawing the shoulder in, whatever the details were, address it, show how he can work on it at home, how he can work on it in practice, what he can add to warm-ups. And from the bye week to now, he's got 1 miss on an out-breaking route to the right when the ball slipped out of his hand.
Isn't that great? I love this stuff. I want him to tell you a story, folks. So Josh Allen, he was the first guy to tip me off on Josh Allen. So Josh Allen now doesn't take the sacks and doesn't throw picks. And there's a fascinating, you go deep into the numbers. It used to be a thing, you, after a couple years, found something rolling right that was a problem. Tell the audience this story on Josh Allen.
Well, I think what started the Josh Allen hype train at Wyoming, because it wasn't because they won it all or went undefeated, right? It was a play he made versus Boise State. He's rolling right, and he threw it about 45 yards, back corner of the end zone, and it was one of those, well, I don't know anybody who can make that throw type of throws. And then I think he was on Sports Illustrated, and they were maybe going to have game day, and it just kind of started to happen, right? The hype train, whatever that means, started to roll. And then he got a lot of positive reinforcement from that, right? Like all of a sudden everyone's talking about you, and you see yourself on TV, and they keep showing that play, and he's so good at it. So he would roll right, and when he'd roll right, he would make unbelievable throws down the field and kept chasing it. When he got it early in the first 2 years, and Brian Daboll was, developing him, and really they were developing that team, because Bills fans know this. Everyone forget, like, his number 1 receiver his rookie year was Kelvin Benjamin. Yeah. Like, this is not, he didn't step into some perfect situation. But really through the first 2 years, I think he was high 50s completion percentage. Yeah. And when he would roll right, and at the time, I think I wrote it all down, but it was, rolling right. You've got this many, 10 touchdowns, 15 unbelievable throws, 13 picks and a bunch of hits, a bunch of you getting pushed or getting tackled and landing on your right shoulder, and you only get so many of those.
That's right. You hear that? So he kept falling on his right shoulder. You discovered that, and then
it needs to become an asset because you have the highest level.
Now
of
what's
this.
happened to him?
Well, I think now teams are sitting here going, we can't let him roll right because he's not turning it over.
That's right.
He's not taking unnecessary hits. And I think he's one of the most dynamic runners, not at the quarterback position, in the league.
So I've never heard anybody even discuss this. You just didn't like him falling on his right shoulder because your belief, and it's true, is your body gives you about 300 of those, and then it regresses.
Availability. It's the whole,
right.
like, what's your best ability conversation? Well,
Yeah.
availability is.
Okay, I want to talk about another NFL quarterback. You're a very optimistic, positive quarterback guru. I, of course, tend to come off as cynical and negative. I like Brock Purdy, but I have a theory on quarterbacks, the if bucket. After about 3 ifs, I'm not paying you starting with a 5. You're a 3 or a 4. If it's not raining, if he gets protection, if he has McCaffrey, if he's leading. The numbers tell you trailing fourth quarter, you're not quite the same quarterback. I couldn't pay Brock a fortune. I like him. I don't love him. Why should I love him? What do you see with him?
I think there's so many ways for us to come to a conclusion or an opinion on somebody, right? So stats, depending on who you are and what you're doing for a living, right? Like stats is one, tape for certain people.
Sure.
Right? If you're in the media, tape's less relevant. If you're in a front office, stats are less relevant. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So depends on what context you're looking at it through. I, with Brock, look at it like, what situations have we put him in and how has he handled it? And when you've had a healthy, good roster, he's basically played like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and at least in my opinion. Last season, the way that the plays that he made, the mistakes that he didn't make and avoided, but then the way that he went through the playoffs and played great, didn't change the whole leadership element that really only the people in the building can speak to,
Sure.
right? We can all have opinions, but you're there. And Sam Darnold backed him up last year, so I got a chance to hear just how mature and focused and confident this guy remained.
He's a bright kid.
All the way through the Super Bowl, right? And so if we build around him, this is a guy that I don't know if it starts with a 5, but it definitely starts with a 3 or a 4 if you're asking me. Like you give him a ton of money, you give him a 3-year deal.
Okay.
If the left tackle's hurt and the running back's out and the receiver's out, he's not as good. Well, if you pay the quarterback, then John Lynch's job is to build around him. And I think there's 2 things the Niners have done a really good job of. One of them is evaluating talent, finding good players. I don't know the name of the running back for them who's playing well right now. The second thing they've done is develop players. And so if you're a Niners fan, you go, let's lock in Brock Purdy. I don't like the whole franchise him and make him prove it. He's proven it. So pay him and then do a great job of evaluating talent and developing the talent around him. And he may lose Debo this year for whatever reason. Well, you drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. I think they did a good job evaluating talent. Now it's time to develop them.
I want to go, let's talk a couple rookies. You have kind of an interesting belief on Caleb Williams, who has had the roughest rookie season. And your belief is what?
The talent is there, worthy of being the number 1 pick, worthy of being the Heisman Trophy winner, worthy of being the Elite 11 MVP and number 1 recruit in the country. Like that part hasn't changed for me. I think, however you want to classify this, I would put it in let's just use this word, failure. Okay, this hasn't been the C.J. Stroud year from last year, right? Or Jaden from this year. So for his standards, which has been number one, like all the way through, this is a step back, whatever. If this is classified as a failure, not that it's his fault, right? All the pieces around him. I think for guys who've had nothing but success, a failure year where it didn't go the way that you had envisioned actually can be really good for your growth. I think it's been really good for a lot of people's growth in the background in the past. I think it's been good for Sam Darnold's development. Just like when we look at Josh Allen and we say no offers, had to go to JUCO. Well, that was failure early. It didn't work.
Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady.
I think a healthy dose of a tough year for the incredibly confident and incredibly talented players, which is what Caleb Williams is, I think it can actually do wonders. And I think we're going to see his best ball ahead of him. And I'm not really concerned with Caleb's future looking out. I think he's in a really tough spot right now, and he needs to get better. And for the first time in his life, in his football career, it's not just him wanting to get better. It's obvious he needs to improve. He needs to find ways to improve. I think that's healthy for the really elite thinkers, really elite confidence guys, and the really elite talents.
Okay, I got to ask you about 2 college guys, because there will be a guy in this draft. I'm targeting Riley Leonard. I'll get to him in a second, Notre Dame quarterback. I like him a lot. But again, he came from Duke. It's a new system. Notre Dame is asking a lot of him, and it took a while to get going, but he's been very good lately. But Jalen Milroe is fascinating. My comp is he's a much better Anthony Richardson. I like him. I would absolutely draft him, not as my first quarterback, maybe not as my second. I think he's a first-round quarterback. What do you see? You've been so good on this through the years. What do you see with Jalen Milroe that, if I'm right, that makes him a first-round quarterback?
Well, I look for, anybody looks for unique traits. And when I say unique, I don't mean one of the, unique, the word means like there's not another one like it.
That's right.
And he has 2. So the first one is the athleticism. He's a client of mine. I've been to Tuscaloosa a handful of times this year. And the same thing that I said with Joe and Sam, I've got 10 college guys where we work throughout the entire year. We talk every single week and go through things. I've been out there. That little Ryan Williams receiver, the rookie, goes out there. I go, hey, how fast is Jalen compared to the other guys on the team? Him and other guys are like, well, Jalen's the fastest guy on the team.
Jalen's faster than Williams.
I think Jalen's the fastest guy on the team. I think the guys at Alabama would say that. So he's not like going to run a fast 40. He's like the fastest guy on the field. Okay, so that's unique. Faster than the others by definition.
Fastest guy on Alabama,
or on any field. And so you go, okay, the athleticism, and get to full speed's another thing, because a lot of guys have top end speed, but we saw guys like Vince Young, like that, not necessarily translate the running in the NFL, because some guys it takes a lot longer to get to their time might be fast. This dude's full speed in like 3 steps. So the athleticism is unique.
Okay.
And there'll be Lamar Jackson comps in terms of, the draft and coming out, but he's got like 20 pounds on Lamar. So he's a bigger, stronger.
Little mechanical for my taste. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, everybody's throwing motion, mechanic, like that all evolves. And what I have seen from him is the buy-in, the attention to it, and the professionalism, how he looks at developing it, not just going, I've got a super strong arm and I'm going to roll with it, which a lot of people do. I don't think it's going to affect anything moving forward. I think the first one is the athleticism. The second thing is his personality. Once he goes through this draft process, folks like you, front offices, teams meet him. Like this dude's a magnet. This guy's a light. Like he is that cool to be around. And so those 2 unique traits will stand out as the process unfolds. The tape will be the tape. There's some good, there's some bad, like everybody. And I think somebody's going to fall in love with him, and he's going to go higher than some people thought, and as high as I thought.
Riley Leonard, people roll their eyes at me. I see a little Josh Allen, tall, athletic. Marcus Freeman tells me relentless competitor. He, like all these young guys, Duke didn't ask him to do what Notre Dame is, didn't love him early. After about week 5, 6, 7, I'm like, I don't know, folks. Tall, rangy, athletic arm. Is there something there? Am I nuts?
Absolutely. No, not nuts. I think this guy's going to be a really good player. Really athletic.
His basketball tape's insane.
Yeah, and it shows up. Like some guys are great basketball players, and you would have never known it. Some guys, you watch their tape, and I tell you they're great at basketball, you go, oh, that makes sense. Right. You know what I mean? And so with him, I think all the mobility stuff that he has, I don't know what his 40 time is, I don't care. That part translates. Running in the league as a quarterback is like the sum of 6 and 8 yard gains. Yeah, it's not the 55 yard, right?
That's right.
And then I like guys that have gone to another school for their last year and played well, because there's a lot of newness. It's similar to a rookie year.
Yeah.
You go from Duke to Notre Dame. It's not just new for you. It's Notre Dame. It's a new
lot of academically tough, schedule. Everything.
Yeah, the magnitude of it, all the stuff you got to do. They're going to pay you NIL money. That means you got to do a lot of stuff. Right. And you got to be a lot of places and talk to a lot of people. And then the new teammates. And then they had a bad loss to Northern Illinois. Yeah. And it totally could have caved, and it didn't. They're on like an 8 or 9 game heater. I think Marcus Freeman deserves a lot of credit for that. I think Riley Leonard does too.
Okay, so it's called QB Summit. It's a program that helps quarterbacks reach their potential. He's had Burrow, Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix. By the way, Bo Nix, you liked it. Has it been what you thought?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the perfect pairing between him and Sean. And there's so much of Bo's, not just game, but personality.
He's intense.
That's similar to Drew Brees, right? Very mature. He's married. He's dealt with adversity.
His arm's better than I thought.
And he's a lot more athletic than anybody gave him credit for.
He moves.
Yes, he moves. And so I think it's been exactly what Sean Payton was hoping it would be, and the best ball is ahead of him.
Did Sean call you?
He did not, but I think he got exactly what he was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, he had so many starts in college that he was one of those you kind of knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I thought his arm was Derek Carr-ish, kind of in the same thing. And then I've watched him deliver some deep throws, and I'm like, well, Aaron Rodgers' arm got stronger in the NFL.
It all evolves. Absolutely. And the way this guy approaches his development in his game is like some of these other guys I've talked about, where it's like he's doing it like he's been in the league for a long time and already knows what he needs to work on. How
do you make, not that I'm going to go out and throw a football, how do you make your arm stronger? Aaron's was strong in college. It's insane now. It's not a bench press. Is it plyometrics? What is it?
No, I think it starts with Burrow's a perfect example, because even though he torched college football, his arm has gotten a lot stronger, really coming off the ACL. Because when you can better understand, one, there's the strength component, but when you can better understand how to use the ground. So let's just say when I go to throw and I lift my left foot in the air, 100% of the force that I'm putting in the ground is through my right foot, right?
Right.
Because my left foot's on the ground. And then at some point when I'm throwing the football, all that goes to the left foot, my right foot leaves the ground. So it's really a conversation around how much force am I putting into the ground, and how is that transfer from my back foot to my front foot happening? When you can do that and build it all the way up. And so for Joe, like I said, on the annual basis, he's coming off of a very scary wrist injury.
Yeah.
We forget about it now because he's like up for MVP, but like, well, hold on. This was a rare one. You know, this isn't an ACL that a million people get those. This was a rare wrist injury. So he executed this plan of having to recruit more things, so come January, he doesn't have to compensate and pronate his wrist and create an issue. And so whether you're increasing your velocity or you're a big, strong arm guy trying to get more touch, it's the same thing. It's how am I applying force to the ground and how is that transferring?
Jordan Palmer. It's great seeing you again.
Thanks for having me.
Happy holidays. Your brother, Carson Palmer, now is coaching his son at
Santa Margarita.
It's
Trinity League. They got Mater Dei and Bosco.
No, I know. That's like
year.
Big boy football.
Yeah.
And his son's pretty good, right?
Yeah, he's a good little player.
Yeah. Great seeing you, man.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.